Thanks, David. It's Metro Morning on CBC Radio for Monday. I'm Matt Galloway. Good morning. Last week, 3 pedestrians in their 20s were killed in the GTA. This is not just a blip. Pedestrian fatalities in this city have risen steadily over the past few years. We're going to have a close look at what is going on the streets of Toronto coming up in just a moment on Metro Morning. Bathurst and Eglinton, McCowan near Finch, Kennedy Road north of Steeles in Brampton, all locations of fatal collisions last week between cars and pedestrians. Not just cars, trucks, and pedestrians. In Toronto alone, there have been 34 pedestrian fatalities this year. That's up by more than 60% from 2011. What's happening on our roads that has these numbers spiraling, and what can be done to better ensure that people are safe out on our streets? Al Mengi is a Toronto School crossing guard at Jordan Leslie, has been at the job for 10 years. 2 years ago, he was named Crossing Guard of the Year. Al joins us on the line. Al, good morning.
Good morning, Matt.
And Angelo DiCicco is a driving instructor and general manager of Young Drivers of Canada. Angelo, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Al, describe traffic at the corner of Gerrard and Leslie for me.
It's very busy, especially during rush hour in the mornings.
And what do you see from your post as a crossing guard?
I find that the speed limit is too high, for one thing. Apparently, when there's no posting on the street limit on the street, it's 50. Mm-hmm. There's no markings on Gerrard. I've been sort of trying to work with Paula Fletcher with City Council to get it lowered to a 30 or 35.
But do you think people even drive 50, or are they driving faster than that?
Well, they come down the hill from, I'm right at Jordan Leslie, so when they come down the hill, driving west from Greenwood, they seem to pick up speed as they're going up the hill. And they're going far too fast.
So just how would you, there's a lot of different factors at play. When pedestrians are on the street, when drivers are trying to get around, there's bikes, there's people who are on other kinds of scooters and e-bikes. How would you describe the atmosphere at that corner?
It's hectic, it's very busy. I find a lot of people don't pay attention, especially pedestrians. I'm 20 feet away from the opposite corner, but a lot of people go down the far corner to run towards the streetcar, and they won't walk over to the city crossing, which is only 20 feet away.
Angelo, your job is to teach people how to drive. How would you describe the way that people are driving in the city these days?
Well, the reality is, if you think there's a limited amount of space, and with an ever-increasing number of road users, and all of us are facing a decreasing amount of time, so we're under a fair bit of pressure. Everyone probably listening now is getting ready to go somewhere. The lucky ones get to ride their bike or walk or take a good transit, but a big chunk of them are taking cars with the limited amount of space, and it's taking them longer. And unless you keep the perspective of the community of drivers, people are starting to taking their breakfast with them, they're taking their work with them in the car, and when you get to a normal place where a pedestrian is, it requires a lot more attention. And as Al was saying, if the pedestrians aren't paying that much attention, that's a recipe for disaster.
How do you teach your students to be aware of everyone that's around them, to focus on what it is that they are doing, but also, you kind of have to be paying attention if you're driving, if you're riding, if you're walking, to all of these different factors at the same time. But when you're teaching drivers, how do you teach them to pay attention to everything that's out there?
And that's the toughest part, right? So most people take 5-7 years of experience to get to a point where they're consciously or unconsciously competent. A new driver is consciously competent. They have to think about every single maneuver. And that's where you get into good habits, and the habits of moving your eyes every 2 seconds and looking for movement. Not necessarily movement that is going to directly affect you. You have to read the traffic flow. If you see that there's a bus up ahead that's picking up passengers, and out of the corner of your eye you catch that there's something moving, well, that might be the pedestrian who should be going to Al to cross safely. But you have to be able to read that they ain't going there. They're taking a beeline straight across, and now it's a problem for you that really shouldn't be there
So as somebody who's behind the wheel a lot, how unsettled are you by the fact that 3 people in their 20s were killed walking around this region in 1 week?
It's awful, Matt. I mean, not all of them were children running between parked cars chasing a ball. A number of them are seniors, so they're not, necessarily fast-moving targets. So we're talking about actual people who are not paying attention. Distracted driving is a huge topic at Young Drivers of Canada that we put on and go. You would be amazed at how little cognitive horsepower you have available left over when you're actually scanning for, pedestrians walking where they may not normally be.
What do you mean?
So you only have a certain amount of cognitive horsepower, right? And you're thinking about scanning the intersection, left, center, right, checking the rear view mirror. Hopefully those are unconsciously competent tasks, which you're going to do anyway. Then something out of the corner of your eye, you see movement. Well, you have to take your forward attention away to glance over to the right just to make sure it's not going to affect you. Now, the vehicle in front is slowing down because there's a countdown timer, and they've got plenty of time to continue to go through. When you typically see the same countdown timer, you're speeding up and they're slowing down. And now you've got the added movement on the side of a pedestrian. That eats up a lot of attention, especially if you're, thinking about getting to work or having another sip of coffee.
Al, what do you teach young kids about crossing the road? What are the rules that you drill into them?
Well, something that I learned when I was very young, because they're not new. A lot of people regard them as something that's really different, but they've been around probably Canada for like a good 50 years, these crosswalks. First of all, you press the button, you wait for the lights to go on, and then you check to make sure traffic is stopped. I don't let anybody cross. I will not enter the crosswalk until all the traffic is stopped. And I have a rule, I don't know if you know or not, there's approximately 14 schools that run off of Gerrard. Just going from Coxville up to Broadview, that's a staggering amount. So a lot of children. But I have a rule, one specific rule: no headsets. I will not cross anybody until they're unplugged, because a lot of the kids nowadays are tuned in all the time. And drivers as well.
Is it possible to have this conversation without, immediately it leads to the blame game of people saying, well, it's this person's fault, it's that person's fault, they weren't paying attention, they had headsets on, etc. Is it possible to have this discussion, do you think, Al, without that blame game?
It's a two-way street. Drivers are in a rush, like Angela said, they're in a rush to get someplace. They're not focused, and the kids, there's so many kids. I heard of a stat that's staggering. In fact, if you go onto a streetcar or a bus, approximately 60% of all people are tuned in, and they can't hear what's going on around.
Angelo, you said there's a number of people who are getting set to go somewhere. Your one bit of advice to them as they get ready to go wherever they're going this morning?
It's safe driving culture. Everybody just wants to get home or to work or wherever they're going safely. You got to keep room for yourself to make mistakes, but also for the other guy. So, do a good turn for someone.
Angelo, thank you.
Have a great day, guys.
And Al, thank you very much.
Not a problem. Have a great day, Matt.
Al Mangui is a school crossing guard at Gerrard and Leslie. Angelo DeChico, driving instructor and general manager of Young Drivers of Canada, talking about the number of people who were struck and killed last week. 3 pedestrians in their 20s killed in the GTA in 1 week alone. The number has gone up by something like 60% since 2011. Some advice, if you have any, on getting around safely, let us know. Twitter at Metro Morning, 416-205-5807. Not something that we want to have repeated, obviously, this week. It's 22 minutes after 6 with a look at what's happening in that commute. Susan McReynolds is with us this morning. Good morning.